Rev up your engines!
Saw that the Tesla workers in China were living, eating, sleeping, and breathing in the factory because of the COVID stuff. Well, now they say after COVID, they're going to continue to do it, right? Well, it's sort of like slave labor if you really think about it. They say, oh, it's going to be called a closed loop system. So they stay there all the time. And I quote, nobody goes in or out. Employees will live and work at the factory where the first shift entering earlier in the week is expected to stay the rest of the week. And they say reportedly the workers will work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. Gee, it sounds like the old mill work around here in New England in the 1800s. Are we going back in time now? Yeah, they can live there, they can stay there the whole time. They can work 12 hours, 6 days a week, and then they're staying in the factory the whole time. They live there, they eat there, they sleep there. I mean, you can't get any closer to slavery. You get the 1 day. Maybe if they took the 1 day away, then it would be 7 days a week. Bad enough they're going to other countries to get cheaper labor, but then they're treating them like slaves, and they're actually talking about this and telling people. You'd think they'd want to hide it all away from the world, not tell anybody what they're doing. How'd you like to work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, and have to stay in a factory, live, sleep, eat, breathe there? But they give you 3 free meals. They are feeding you, you know. Maybe it's just water and crackers. I don't know. They want to save money so they can sell their expensive cars at a high profit. You know, less labor costs. Workers here all the time. They love it there. Yeah, sure. They're starting to push the boundaries here. Well, at least they're catching crooks in Pennsylvania. A predatory Pennsylvania Hills used car dealership was banned from selling cars by the government. In Penn Hills, Pennsylvania, there was this rip-off car dealership that was selling junk to people, and the government shut them down. By law, since 2014, they have to sell cars that are, in quote, roadworthy. In one car, 2 weeks after she bought it, the brakes failed on a woman. They sold cars that were rotted out, and they put tape and paint to make them look like they're not rotted out. I know Pennsylvania has different laws. If your car has too much rust on it, it can't meet the inspection and it can't be driven on the road. So they just hid it. The coronavirus stuff, the demand went up for used cars, the prices went up, and they were just selling all kinds of junk to people, and they got caught. So the Martino Motors and the man Martino himself has been banned from ever selling cars again in Pennsylvania. Maybe he'll move to another state. We don't know. But of course, the guy denied any wrongdoing, you know. I mean, come on now. Everybody knows. Not the most honest places to go most of the time. If you remember that old picture of Richard Nixon that said, would you buy a used car from this man after, you know, he resigned the presidency for Watergate? I mean, but I got to give it to Pennsylvania. They shut the guy down. They said, you're selling junk to people. You were breaking our law that says they have to be roadworthy cars. And they banned the guy from doing it. So Young Tony 843 says, should I buy a 2003 Honda Accord? It's fully loaded, $1,500 for 230,000 miles. Only issue is that the catalytic converters were cut off and straight pipe was used. Where do you live? Some states, they don't check them for emissions after 10 years or 15 years. And if that's the case, even 15, yours isn't going to be inspected and you won't care. Some places like Tennessee don't do any kind of emissions testing, so it wouldn't really matter. You're talking about a car with 230,000 miles. A lot of miles. Hondas are well made, right? And $1,500 is nothing for a car these days. Have a mechanic check out the engine and transmission, especially the transmission. I'm assuming it's an automatic transmission. That's the weakest part of an 03 Accord. Mechanic says the tranny's going out, don't buy it. To fix that tranny, it'll cost you $3,500 to $5,500 to put a remanufactured transmission in it. So that's what you got to watch out for. You start there. RX in California says, what's the most reliable used electric vehicle? I'm looking at a BMW i3 that's 5 years old or a Nissan Leaf. I don't like American cars, but does it apply to a Chevy Bolt? All right, well, I would not buy a Chevy Bolt. They have a problem with their batteries. They're not that well made. One, I'd scratch that off the list. And out of those, I'd say a Leaf. I had customers in Houston with Leafs. They like them. They have a limited range, but they're relatively well made. The BMW is a BMW. They're fun to drive. I had a guy bring me one. He loved the car. He got rear-ended and got rid of it. Now he's got a Volvo Polestar electric car. But they're very expensive to maintain, BMWs. The Leafs generally are much lower to maintain, and it's a somewhat lower tech car, being a Nissan versus a BMW. It's not going to have all the bells and whistles that are going to break that it can break on a BMW. You just have to decide, though, is the range okay for you? Because they have a limited range. Of course, the BMW i3 has a limited range, too. It doesn't go that far. That's what you got to decide. But buying used, yeah, you can save a ton of money. They have crappy resale value. You know, they can't get in an electric car and drive across the country, go on long trips, so it limits to certain people, and that limits the value of the car. Anthony Geronimo says, I got Monroe Monroe Roadmatic struts, but they're different than my factory strut, my '07 Sonata. They don't have all the same parts and grooves that the original equipments do, the Monroe one. Now, it doesn't have a key like one on the Kia does. I looked at the ones at the auto parts store and they had the same. They were like the Monroe, not like the factory. Okay, well, the factory ones were made for the car, designed correctly. Monroe is a company that years ago, their quality started to go. When I was a mechanic in the 60s, they were decent, right? But now they make them overseas, they make them all over the place, they make them crap. I actually put Monroe struts on my old Toyota Corolla SR5. The stupid things didn't last 10,000 miles, they wore out. Then I put KYBs and I thought, let's compare them. I cut Monroes in half and they looked big, but inside there was just a little strut. It was skinny, where the KYB replacement ones were thicker. The thicker they are, the longer they're going to last, the better they're going to absorb shocks. They just make them as cheap as they possibly can. I would not put Monroes on any vehicle I own. Now, they will go on and they will work, but needless to say, they probably won't ride that long, and I can guarantee you for sure they won't last that long. Because you're talking about changing it on a car 15 years old. If those lasted 15 years, you'd be lucky if you get 2 or 3 out of the Monroes before they wear out. They're just cheaper made. I would take them back if I were you and say, look, they don't fit, and get at least KYBs. They make KYBs for those. Some of those are perfectly fine. You don't have to go to the factory one, but the KYB ones are much better than those Monroes. Monroe, the quality's been going down for decades. Enteco03 says, how do I fix my Jeep that won't start? I got 2016 Jeep with 96,500 miles. My battery died twice. I fully charged the battery, and the car chokes out. Sometimes it goes to 1,000 RPM, down to 500, back to 1,000, and then it idles okay. I had the battery starter and alternator tested, and they all said they're okay. What could it be? I'm assuming they tested it correctly. It's not that hard to test batteries and alternators with modern equipment. So let's say they tested it correctly. If they didn't, of course, it could be the battery or the starter. If it keeps stalling out, you got to start with the simple things. Numero uno, change the fuel filter. Clogged fuel filter will do that. Check your spark plugs. Maybe they need to be replaced. They wear out. Make sure you got a clean air filter. Then when it is running, listen, because you say the RPMs go up and down. If you hear sucking sound, you got a vacuum leak. 6-year-old Jeep, the rubber vacuum lines could have broken on it. You can even have a dirty mass airflow sensor. For that, you'd watch my video, Make Your Car Run Better with a little spray cleaner, Scotty. You can clean the throttle. You can clean the mass airflow sensor with spray cleaner. You can buy the 2 bottles for like $20, the pair of them, and clean it. It'll clean them. And that could easily solve the problem. But when they go up and down, it's often there's a vacuum leak or the mass airflow sensor isn't working, or the fuel filter's clogged, or the air filter clogged. Start with the simple stuff and then work your way up if you have to. Dover Street 96 says, I got a 95 Jeep Grand Cherokee, the transmission slipping. My grandfather gave it to me. It's got 300,000 miles. Now, I noticed slight slipping in gear changes. You check the fluid and it's low. Should I add some? Well, of course, you want to add it. You want to keep it at a level. That is an old vehicle and you say it's starting to slip. What I would do is, rather than just add fluid, get some of the Lucas transmission fixed. Now, it doesn't work that good in modern cars, but that's not a modern car. That's a 95, and it works great there. You put the Lucas transmission fix slip instead of the fluid. Comes in a quart. Pour the whole thing in and make sure it's at the full line. Now, if it isn't to the full line, then do add a little more fluid after that to make sure it's full. But that stop slip can work miracles on an old transmission. Now, it's a Jeep. It's a 95. I mean, hey, it could just be wearing out and saying goodbye, but that Lucas transmission stop slip works fantastic with old American vehicles like that. So I would try that first. F. Artist says, I want a convertible. I'm looking at hardtop convertibles. I looked at a Pontiac G6, but they're out of business and I can't get parts for it. My dream car is a Lexus IS 250, but it costs too much. The 350C is even more. So I've narrowed it down to an 07 Volkswagen EOS or a Toyota Solara. Which would be better? Well, hands down, the Toyota Solara. Volkswagens are endless money pits. My niece bought a Volkswagen convertible years ago. It was the biggest pile of junk that she ever had. They're garbage. When they age, they fall apart. The rag tops are made like junk. The Toyota Solaris are excellent vehicles. Now you might say, okay, Scotty, what are you, nuts? They don't make them anymore. Well, they don't make them because of weird marketing decisions by Toyota. The Toyota Solara is basically a Toyota Camry. And if you get the convertible, it's a convertible Toyota Camry, which they never made a convertible Toyota Camry. They made convertible Toyota Solaris. But it was priced at the wrong price for what you get, because they had Camrys, they had Avalons, and they had various Lexuses, right? Why did they make the Solera, which was like in between Avalon and a Camry? And it was like, it's the same car, give or take a little bit. It's just that they made convertibles. There's nothing wrong with them. You can get parts for them. It's a Toyota. They're really well made. The guy just bring one the other day, only paid $3,000 for it used. Beautiful car. So, yeah, like anything, you got to buy a used car, you got to have a mechanic check it out. Don't trust anybody. People lie, cheat, and steal selling used cars. That's just the way it is. But the Solaris can be excellent convertibles. The Volkswagens, they're endless money pits. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.